In my last video, I explained why Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies like it would never make particularly good currencies. The reason I gave for this was I think that they are bubbles. As you can see from the title of this video, I still think that that's the case. So the basic argument that I gave is that people primarily value Bitcoin because they think that it's going to be worth more in the future. If they see the price stabilizing, they will no longer believe this and thereby pull their money out or be less willing to purchase it, and therefore the price will fall. A falling price is not a stable price, and therefore Bitcoin cannot stabilize, as its stability would cause instability. I also said that I think that things which have some consumption value would not fall prey to this because people are not primarily valuing it because they think it'll be worth more in the future. They're primarily valuing it because they're going to use it. Things like cookies and oil and chicken. You get the idea. All of these things are valued because of some consumption use, and if there is no consumption use, that thing will be very volatile. It will be, as I define it, and as pretty much anyone would define it, but differently, a bubble. So one of the main things that I had to field, and I preemptively fielded, was, well, what about gold? Gold is primarily valued as a speculative asset, so why does it have so much stability? And why has it been successfully used before as a currency? And the answer I gave is simply that it's not. It's not ultimately valued as a speculative asset. It's primarily used for jewelry and electronics and other industrial uses. If you actually look at the usage, I gave some stats on that. Now, one of the first comments I wanted to go through was actually updating the stats that I gave. So you can see here, as of 2017, 38% jewelry, 34% electronics, only 22% official coins, and 6% for other uses. So that's pretty interesting. It seems that those stats are even better for my perspective than the ones I gave were, but in any case, the point still stands. Gold has a non-trivial amount of usage that it actually has. There's plenty of people who value gold for its use value, and that's where the majority of its value comes from. So that's why gold only has a trivial amount of volatility. The more speculation, the more volatility. Gold has plenty of speculation, so plenty of volatility, but it has also plenty of use value, so it's got plenty of stability. The next thing I wanted to go into was probably the most common response that I got. I'm just using this particular example from Anti-Rack. An economic bubble is a direct result of state intervention in the market, creating false incentives for investors. So yeah, Bitcoin isn't a bubble by definition. Well, obviously I agree with that by that definition. If we define an economic bubble simply as a whole lot of malinvestment created by the government, then sure, by definition, Bitcoin isn't a bubble. But if you expand your definition of bubble a little to also include the exact same situation when it's created by any entity other than the state, which I think you should, then Bitcoin is a bubble. I don't think it makes much sense to say that well, when the state creates a whole lot of malinvestment, that's a bubble. When some other entity or just a common mistake people are making creates a whole lot of malinvestment, that's not. That seems like an arbitrary distinction to me. The next thing I wanted to bring up was a comment on the YouTube video by Carlos here. There's one situation you didn't consider, he says, a government demanding Bitcoin as payment of taxes. It would fit your framework. Yes, it would. So the point I made to refresh you all about fiat is that there is a use case for that as well, that you pay your taxes in it. You're essentially, the government has a vested interest in the money being valuable so that it can inflate it, among other things, and therefore the government says, I'm going to shoot you if you don't pay me your taxes in fiat currency, and thereby the fiat currency has value. Right? Give me this thing or I'll shoot you. Well, you're going to want to make sure you have that thing so I don't shoot you. That gives it value. So anyway, what he's saying there is that what if a government started accepting taxes in a crypto? And yeah, it seems like that would prop up the value of that currency and would make it a more viable currency. So sure, I totally agree that if that were to happen, my argument kind of goes out the window. Certainly, though, I think that the point here is Bitcoin is meant to be a way of getting away from these fiat currencies. If we just turn it into a fiat currency, then sure, it would work. Oh, this next one is from Back Alley Philosophy. So that's, I think it's a YouTuber by the name of Esoteric Entity, and it also seems to have another one in there. I think his name is Filthy Heretic. And I think this is Esoteric Entity responding, though. At the end there, you can see, and that's just within the first 2 minutes of the video. That's a yikes from me, my dude. So he didn't actually watch the entire video. He said so on his Discord server that no, it's not just that he's only responding to the first 2 minutes, he didn't watch it all. So, ESO, if you want a decent response, then respond to the full video after watching the whole video. If you're not going to do that, I'll just respond to the first 2 words of your comment. Doesn't acknowledge. I acknowledged lots of things in that video, so your comment's wrong. And if you think that I need to read more of it before I can respond, then The next thing that I'm going to talk about is this comment by Andre Feitzner. I think I'm saying that correct. If you pause to think about it, he says, even gold could also not be money on a libertarian society by this definition of a bubble, because gold, if used as money, would have value only because people expect other people to accept gold in exchange for goods in future. No, it would have a use value still. Right? People would still use it for electronics, and people would still use it for jewelry, etc., etc. So it's going to have some end use value. I never said that you couldn't have something that people would trade and there'll be a whole lot of different steps along the route to get to that individual who ends up actually using it. What I said was that if there is no individual at the end who will actually use it, then it's only based on confidence and therefore is going to be unstable for the reasons that I've already outlined even in this video. Most people will not value gold just because gold can be melted and used for other practical purposes. I didn't say it had to be most people, but there has to be a non-trivial amount of actual usage of it, which is going to prop the value up, and people will then exchange that value that is in that thing, and the value is in that thing because people value it for its use case. Most people would just use gold as a proxy for real goods. If another much better suited material substance comes in, gold would be discarded as money. Even food is more important than gold, for example. Yes, gold would be discarded as money if there was something better, but there's a whole bunch of reasons that gold make it particularly good money. It's got a very stable supply. It's quite rare. It's very saleable. Like there's a lot of good things about gold that make it a good money. But the thing that keeps it stable, and that's the important thing, is again the fact that it has an end use case. At the end of the day, goods are what really matter, and any form of money is just a medium proxy technology to allow people to exchange goods more easily by using a common metric system which can be used to compare the market value of things easily. Without a metric system, it would be very hard to decide how many apples a car is equivalent to for someone subjectively. Yeah, you do need some metric to apply, but just because we all decide that we're going to use X as a measure of value does not stabilize X's value magically, right? That's why we can't just pick anything we feel like and say, well, that's our money. That's why gold has been so consistently used as money. There are things about it which make it a good money. It's not arbitrary. It's not just a metric system we pick. It has to be something that has a lot of qualities, and one of those is stability, and I don't want to become a broken record here. So I'll just skip right along to the next one, which is by Huge Thinker. You can pause here and read the whole comment if you want. I think, after reading the whole thing, that it all just flows from that first sentence where he makes a complete mistake and the rest is wrong from there. So the end use of Bitcoin and similar currencies is in being a medium of exchange. That is not an end use. A medium of exchange requires something valuable to be exchanged with something else valuable. Right? We have two things of value and we exchange them because we both prefer what the other one has. for me to prefer the one that you have, right, there would have to be some use value for me, or I'd have to value it because I want to trade it to someone else. And if I want to trade it to someone else, that person would have to value it. So I'd have to know that that person's going to value it. And he'd have to know the next person is going to value it. Now, this is a completely arbitrary value unless there's someone who's going to use it at the end. And that's why you don't get a stable value that you can use for a medium of exchange unless there's an end use. And a medium of exchange is by definition not an end use. The whole point of the concept of end use is that it is not just a medium of exchange. That is the whole reason for using that term, to differentiate it from a medium of exchange. Okay. This next one. So those are good points, but what you're forgetting is anyone who thinks Bitcoin is a bubble is gay. I actually said no homo before making the video, so haha, I so funny. Thank you, Sly9. So the next one I'm moving on to is Matthew Deverell, but Bitcoin isn't a product, it's a currency, and the value to that currency is the anonymity. Anonymity is great, and a currency which is anonymous is preferable. And there are reasons that were something to be working as a currency, if that thing were anonymous, that would be preferable. But that is not the kind of value that I'm talking about. That's not the value for an individual Bitcoin, right? That doesn't stabilize the value. That just means it would be very attractive if Bitcoin would work as a money. The next one is by a guy I think I've seen around the place. Man, he always has a good... The next one is by a guy who I think I've seen around, Bikey, and he says Bitcoin is a bubble because people are thinking of it as an investment rather than a currency. And I'm not going to read this whole comment. I mean, again, you can pause it and read through. In fact, I would recommend you do, because Bikey here has a good take on a lot of things. Ultimately, though, the first paragraph, it gives a bunch of reasons that cryptos are attractive as currencies. But as I responded to the last one, just because it would be an attractive prospect to have a working currency that has the features that crypto has, you're not trusting some arbitrary third party, you're not... It's very easy to keep your personal self separate from your Bitcoin wallet, and therefore it's anonymous in that way. There's a lot of reasons that crypto would be attractive to have as a money, but that doesn't mean it will work as a money. It would have to stabilize. Then he goes on in the second paragraph to say, that's not to say that cryptos are perfect currencies, far from it. And he starts giving reasons why he thinks cryptos maybe aren't such good currencies. By the way, he's also saying that Bitcoin is a pretty bad one and that Monero and Dash have even more attractive features. But once again, that doesn't mean that they do have an end use value, and therefore it doesn't mean they'll stabilize. At the end paragraph, Bitcoin may be a bubble because of its high volatility, he says. But as you yourself mentioned, most people aren't using Bitcoin as a currency, but as a direct investment, just like buying stocks in a company. Yes, so the value that we're trading when we use something as a currency has to come from somewhere. Right? I don't think that things just have... I don't think we just arbitrarily decide that this thing has value now because we want to use it as a currency, and therefore it has a value, especially not a specific and clear one, right? There's no way of setting that value. So what we actually end up having is something that has value for another reason that we then exchange, but there still has to be some end user somewhere who ultimately values that thing because he's going to use it, right? And none of the attractive features of Monero or Dash solve that problem. So whilst I do recommend you pause and read this whole comment because there's some interesting stuff in there, I don't think it solves the problem. Okay, and let's just leave it with this one here. Thomas Jackson, welcome back. Thank you. It's good to be back. The Bitcoin conference isn't even accepting Bitcoin for payment, which is pretty funny. So that all to one side. One of the main things that this response taught me was that I like libertarian infighting. That the drama between libertarians is the best drama, because libertarians they make the best arguments, are the most interesting people to talk to. So I want to do some more of it. The idea that I have, that I am going to be doing, is I will do a series of live interviews where I talk to different people who would consider themselves decent representatives of some subgroup of libertarianism or some libertarian adjacent group. Don't worry, objectivists. I heard you when you said on Twitter to me that you're not libertarians, but I'm going to talk to a Hoppian, and I want to talk to an objectivist and a paleo-libertarian and all those other subgroups, and see if we can sort of see in what ways are they the same and in what ways are they different, and what they all think it means to be a libertarian. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So subscribe to the channel and stick around, and you'll see that good stuff coming soon. Other than that, get out of crypto. It is a bubble.